Hello and welcome to the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers. My name is Ben Consoli, and today we've got Connor Crosby here. And for those of you that are like, who is that? The answer is simple. He's the guy that produces the Go Creative Show. Connor, welcome to the show. You've been behind the scenes for like a decade now almost, it feels like.
It certainly feels that way sometimes. But it's nice to, finally be on the Go Creative Show.
Introduce yourself to the fine people of the Go Creative Show audience.
Well, I call myself a video producer. I've been working with Ben in his production company, BC Media Productions, for several years now, as well as the Go Creative Show. Prior to that, I, was very thankful to have known that I've wanted to be in the video or film industry in some capacity since I want to say I was either 8 or 10 years old. Like, I remember getting my own video camera when I was really young. I remember having my first client when I was I think 12. So I've had a pretty lengthy experience with video production, and it's led me to working with you for the last several years.
Well, the reason we have you on today is for a couple of things. One, you are behind the scenes of Go Creative Show and very much involved. And two, I sort of wanted to give a bit of an apology to the Go Creative Show audience because, we haven't been putting out episodes for a little while, and we didn't really explain why, which isn't fair to the viewers and the listeners out there, because you guys are invested in the show. You communicate with us, you give us guest suggestions. There's a lot of back and forth, and we've been doing the show for years now, like over 300 episodes, I think. I don't remember what the last episode number was, but it's somewhere in the 300s. And it just wasn't right to just kind of stop and not explain what was going on. So the next, I wanted to just kind of say, first of all, apologies for that. And also, we just got busy. Like, we haven't gone anywhere. There's no drama. There's no nothing. It's just like the production company, BC Media Productions, that Connor and I both work at every single day, is just getting really, really busy. And it's a good thing. I mean, we are producers. We're directors. We're doing all these things. So we're getting really busy, and putting this show on week after week after week just became a challenge because I want to do interviews for projects that I'm passionate about, that I'm actually watching, that I really like. And you have to do a lot of research to make good content and good interviews. So I kind of feel like I wasn't able to deliver the quality of show that I wanted to, and also focus on BC Media Productions. I just couldn't do them both at the same time. So it felt like we needed a little bit of a break, which is fine. But what isn't fine is not telling you guys about it. So apologies for that. But over the course of the past couple weeks, Connor and I have been discussing, what do we do with Go Creative Show? We don't want to pack it up because we love these interviews. We also feel like we have information to share. Like, we could be helpful to you by sharing our own personal experience and maybe doing some things that aren't just interviews. And we'll still do interviews, but maybe we try to tackle things like what's going on in video production right now, the news of the day, AI's influence, how things are changing, our own personal experiences when it comes to working with clients and setting budgets and doing all these things. I feel like there's a lot that we can learn from each other and have the show be a little bit more of a community building around video production and not just interviews every single week. So that's kind of what we wanted to do. I'm sure, Connor, you have some thoughts on this too, because you're the one that's been editing and putting all these things together.
Yeah, it certainly, to an extent, was a labor of love with all the effort that was put into the shows. And just with how busy we got with our own production, it just really was not something that we could continue to focus on. And I think we're trying to find a good, healthy balance where we can continue to be focusing on our production company and also Go Creative Show. So I think we're just trying to figure things out, see what works, what doesn't, and also, get that feedback from you guys too, of course.
Yeah, we want to know what you're thinking. We want to know what topics you want covered. We certainly want to know which, directors and cinematographers you'd like for us to bring on the show, because we still want to do that. But I think it's trying to build more of a communication between the listeners and us. And we hope that that's going to be a welcome change. it'll certainly allow us to be a little bit more consistent with content and just kind of talk about different things. So that's the plan. So please accept our apologies. And we hope you stick along for the ride for this new Go Creative Show 2.0 to see what happens. Also, some of you may know, some of you may not know, I started a band in the past couple of years as well called 3 Second Chances, which has been a lot of fun and has taken quite a bit of my free time. That's for sure. And if you guys haven't
You're a busy man. I don't know how you do it. You got way too much going on.
It's a lot. It's a lot going on. But I don't know. I feel like I need to just constantly be in a state of chaos to feel comfortable.
Well, I mean, not everyone would feel that way, but I'm glad you feel that way.
I don't know what it is. I definitely, and I can tell that, actually, I'm curious. What did you, when you heard that I was really starting to focus a little bit more into music, you must have thought, what the hell is going on with him?
Well, I took your age into a factor, and then I was like, oh, well, I can kind of put 2 and 2 together. But
he's saying he thinks
fine.
it's a midlife crisis.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, I'm glad that you're focusing on your passions and what makes you happy and brings you joy and whatnot, and I think everyone deserves that. So as long as you're enjoying all that and still able to make everything else work, then I'd say, hey, let's do it. Let's continue focusing on Go Creative Show.
And maybe it was a midlife crisis. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm currently in it because I am of the age, but I don't know. Honestly, I sort of feel like you almost need to like cleanse the palate a little bit. Like try something new, do something else that is completely unrelated, but still creative in a way. But I feel like everyone should really do that. And I think everybody in the audience can relate. Like you get to a point after 20 years of doing something where you're like, I just want to try something different and get inspired in a different area.
Sure. I think that's totally valid. And how do you think that's been going so far?
For me, I think that getting more involved in music, first of all, it was what I loved the most when I first started really doing anything. From like 16 to 28, from actually 14 to 28, I had been in bands. And I wasn't paying attention to video production at all, other than just making like home movies, which I did do quite a bit. A lot of Christmas movies, a lot of getting the family involved in Christmas movies and making them do stupid things. But
it's so funny that you and I have that similarity, because I was doing the same thing with my family.
I've seen some of your Christmas movies. Here's the benefit that you had. You started it when the technology was much better. I was holding VHS cameras, like the big giant bricks. Mm-hmm. These giant VHS cameras that you hold like that, and whenever I like wanted music in the scene, I had to get a little tape recorder, like the mini cassette things, and I had to record the soundtrack of whatever movie it was that I was into at the time. Get the soundtrack, and then hold my arm like this and play it into the speaker as I was filming. It was
incredible,
absolutely ludicrous, but that's how we did it.
Wow.
We're just totally ripping off other movies. But anyway, to answer your question, I feel like doing something artistic in a different field has sort of refreshed me into, I think it's making me a better producer, making me a better director, because I'm focusing on something outside of it. And it just kind of opens up my mind to a different perspective where, especially since we're making our own music videos for 3 Second Chances, I can flex different muscles that I wasn't doing before that you just simply can't do when you're making corporate video. And it was a way to just try something different. So I think it's beneficial. The only downside is that it does take a lot of time. It just does. So, it's things like Go Creative Show went on the back burner for a while because I'm spending time doing this. But it is and was fun. And I'm kind of excited to see where it goes. But I feel like things have leveled out now. Like I'm able to incorporate it in a more balanced way.
Okay, good. That's great to hear.
You're going to see things will happen like this to you. You have your passion for Disney already. So you have that road that you go down when you don't want to think about production anymore.
Yeah, actually, listeners, if whether or not you liked the Disney content, you can thank me for that, for having cinematographers of Disney movies on. So you're welcome.
That's a good point. Also, in all the Marvel things and like this comic book
Yes.
movies and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, because maybe not my favorite genre in the world.
Yeah, dear listener, it was like pulling his teeth to get him to watch anything Marvel related. I really wanted to cover, some of the really big MCU movies and whatnot, but it was pulling teeth.
These are long things. It's a huge universe, this whole Marvel thing. I feel like, I don't know, if you've just missed things, what am I going to do? Sit there and watch 30 hours of film? And TV too? It's more than that.
Yeah, it's actually more like double, because I think there's at least 32 movies, and they're, both, they're all 2.5 hours or so. So yeah, it's a lot of content, that's for sure.
It's too much. It's just too much. Maybe one day actually, I haven't even seen Wizard of Oz yet. So I think there's a lot more that I need to see before I can dive into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But that's a story for another day. What I wanted to talk about today is the new iPhone, its camera, and once again, I feel like this discussion comes up every year. It's that time of year where we start to think about, can an iPhone be and replace a professional camera? Everybody's talking about it. This happens every September when the new iPhones drop. Mm-hmm. And especially this year, it seems like we're inching really close to that being a yes. Both Connor and I have had the phone since Friday, so it's been a couple of days. But I'd actually like to see I know you've had more time with it than I have, Connor. Like I said, it's that time again. We're discussing the iPhone. Is it going to can it replace a professional camera? What are your thoughts after using it and researching it for the past couple of days?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that it's not a major upgrade from the 15 Pro. So those of you that know the technology or have the 15 Pro, I wouldn't expect a monumental, increase in quality and things like that. The ultra wide camera has been upgraded, so it's now a 48 megapixel lens. So that's a nice bump in quality compared to, I think it was just 12 before. And then the zoom lens is now a 5x zoom, which was only found on the 15 Pro Max before. What's really nice in terms of video that's different is you can now shoot 4K at 120 frames per second, which, to be honest with you, I don't really know many cinema cameras that are capable of doing that, especially for a sustained amount of time.
And it looks good. Is it true that you need the external SSD in order to actually get that 120 frames at 4K? I feel like I heard that.
I think that's correct, at least for shooting ProRes. I want to say if you're shooting H.265, that can be recorded natively onto the camera storage, but shooting ProRes, yes, I believe requires an SSD.
But just the bigger question is simply, it's not even a question about specs. It's just a question about capabilities. Like, and the tool set. Like, can we actually film professional projects with an iPhone? I feel like the answer has to be yes, because it has been done. I mean, every year for the past few years, they seem to be showing more and more content shown on iPhone. The Weeknd's music video was entirely shot on iPhone, and I know that wasn't the first. And the events themselves are shot on iPhone.
That's right. And hey, breaking news, but we've actually had content produced by BC Media that's been shot on an iPhone, and you may not have even known.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Surprise. Yeah, we actually, just to dive into that, we have a client that has apartment leasing throughout the country, different locations, including Boston, Seattle, Atlanta, Denver, etc. And we were shooting in Seattle at an area that's called Pike Place, very well-known area, tons of different markets and whatnot, but if you're going to go there with professional camera equipment, you are required to have a permit. And with the amount of time that we had with this project, we just did not have the amount of time to file the correct permits. And it just so happens that the week that we were there, they were blackout dates. So what we decided to do was we had the 15 Pro. We decided, why don't we just shoot ProRes log on the iPhone, and we'll pretend, everyone around us will think that we're just like, TikTok influencers or something, or even just tourists. And, we were able to go in there without any issue, and we got some really great stuff. In fact, you've seen the video and you had no idea that it was shot on iPhone.
Yeah, I was actually refreshing my memory about that earlier today, and you just couldn't tell, which is kind of nuts because the other camera you were pairing it with was the what were you shooting on? The Canon C300? Or?
No, it was Canon EOS R6, which is a mirrorless camera.
So, obviously we're not pairing it with Alexa's, but the fact that it can go into the mix and be usable is impressive. But I think when I hear criticism about using phones as your primary camera and cinematographers relying on phones and all this stuff, it seems to be cinematographers that have been for a long time using the highest end stuff and really rejecting and resisting the idea that you can get such high quality out of a relatively inexpensive product that anybody can buy. It seems like the criticism may be that it sort of muddies the water a little bit because, yes, if everybody with a phone is now a cinematographer, what is a cinematographer? And that's a big discussion that comes every time a new piece of equipment enters the marketplace. And I remember this back when the 5D came to be. That was at the very beginning of my career in video. And I was, a few years in, but it was relatively early in my career in video. And that was the big story. Oh, the 5D is coming in. It's going to ruin everything. All these new people are going to be able to film. Budgets are going to be lower. All these things. That was what a lot of people were terrified of when that first came out, even though it blew open the doors for a ton of new content creators. It's interesting to see it yet again with mobile phones and just different devices that are less expensive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this happens every 10, 20 years. I think it's, very generational that there's always some kind of change. Because if you look before that, you could make the comparison of switching over to digital and, all the digital cameras in the 90s and whatnot, early 2000s, going from film. So I feel like this just happens every 10, 20 years where there's some kind of evolutional change when it comes to technology and it's just becoming more accessible. I don't think there's anything wrong with more people having access to great tools that are now cheaper than they were before. I think it's in some ways gatekeeping if you're saying, oh, only people that have access to X amount of equipment or Y brand equipment are cinematographers. I think that's unfair. I think it is gonna, the fact that equipment is more accessible or really good quality footage is more accessible means that it's gonna really come down to the skill set of the filmmakers to stand out.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It does concern me a little bit about how many things are replaced with the phone. Like, it seems like roles on set can be replaced because it can do everything, especially when you're thinking about maybe some of the new audio capabilities that the phone has. And yes, a lot of it is still a work in progress, but at some point, maybe even next year, this phone could truly be video and audio together in one unit. And then it starts turning into, do we really need an audio person? Do we really need a lighting person? Do we really need a colorist? That's the only thing that worries me as the technology becomes, better and better. Does that concern you at all?
Yeah. No, I mean, it certainly does. I don't want to make it sound like I'm some heartless producer that's like, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter if we're condensing all the jobs, blah, 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 blah. Like, certainly not. Like, I certainly feel for people. I just want to make it clear that I think the equipment being more accessible and less expensive is not a bad thing. When it comes to consolidating jobs and whatnot, that certainly does suck. That's for sure. And I don't know what we as filmmakers can necessarily do about that other than just pushing for higher quality stuff, because ultimately that's what that's what we're known for, as filmmakers. That's what we strive to do. And so I think that's the only way is to stand out, is to have really good quality stuff. And in order to do that, you really do need to have various roles. The more you condense, the more you put on one person, the less in quality it's arguably going to be.
I remember when that 5D came out, one of the biggest fears was that budgets were going to be production budgets were going to be cut quite a bit, because you no longer need a huge camera package, a huge camera rental package, I guess. And honestly, it was kind of true, because when I first started in production and people were starting to use these smaller cameras and these less expensive cameras, I remember producers and cinematographers and directors that were working 20 years before I started, complaining about the fact that budgets were slashed by like 50%, 60%. And I didn't have a reference point, because I never really worked in the field when budgets were, in the good old days that I hear all about, where, let me take a step back. When I first started, ad agencies, probably about 5 or 6 years before that, were doing huge ad campaigns across the world, sending directors and producers and the whole staff and all these people, flights, food, everything. The budgets were out of control, and a lot of money was spent on things not related to production. And I think it was because the competition couldn't do it for less money. So the budgets stayed where they were. When that 5D came out, and when production companies started building around equipment at that price point, people were able to do things much cheaper. And yes, it did cut budgets down quite a bit. When I first started, I was able to do a project for $20,000 when just 5 years before, it probably would have been $150,000. And that was only possible because equipment prices went down and people started to take on more roles than just being a cinematographer or just being an audio tech. All of this is to say, I haven't seen major budget cuts since the phones have become more of a real tool for filmmaking. Have you seen that?
No, I think we're still a little too early. I think arguably, yes, you can say for a little while now, phones have been able to be used in some kind of professional manner, because even though Apple didn't support ProRes log officially, there were apps like Filmic Pro that have been out for a little while. But, that wasn't as convenient as it is now, where it's built right in. And the fact that the phones have USB-C and you can plug in an SSD, I think just makes it way more accessible. So I think arguably, the using it as a professional tool is something that just kind of started recently, at least in a more accessible manner, because it's now built right in. So I think you could argue that it's probably going to take a couple of years before you start actually seeing more and more productions using it in some kind of professional way, especially now that Apple specifically shoots their events on iPhone.
Yeah, now they're setting a precedent for
yes,
this can be done. And they're not even doing it like really super cinematic quality. I mean, the content that they show, the little video inserts that promote a product look amazing, but I don't even think those are shot on iPhone.
No, it's
just the event.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's they're not even going the extra mile of adding anamorphic and doing all these things to make it incredibly beautiful. They're just saying events can be shot at a really high quality using this phone. And then if you think about it, it is staggering to me that right now you can get a camera for a couple $1,000s. You can get a phone for less. You can get software that's free to do real professional post-production. And I'm talking about, oh my God. Blackmagic. What am I talking about?
DaVinci Resolve?
DaVinci Resolve. You can get DaVinci Resolve for free, a really functional version of it for free, for actually pro post-production and color grade. Of course, Final Cut, which we use all the time, is only $300 forever. You never have to do the upgrades, or you don't have to pay monthly. And then you also have Premiere, which is very inexpensive monthly as well, relatively. I mean, This is stuff that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to have a professional edit suite in your studio. It's amazing that you're able to do that at such a low price. But like you said, it means that you got to have the chops. Like, just because you can play in this arena doesn't necessarily make you good enough to build a career out of it.
Yeah, and I actually would argue that with this equipment and software becoming more accessible to people, I think it actually, in some ways, really helps the middle to high end industry, because people that wouldn't have necessarily thought to try these things out or have access to now do through those tools. And it allows them to kind of like dip their toe in and see, you know, is this something I'm interested in, and play around and build up their skills. And then they see what the professionals are using. They see the high end when it comes to cameras or software or things like that. And it kind of allows them to strive towards those things. And I think it causes those things to get even better and even more in demand as a result.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think it also is like, you realize quickly that it's not necessarily the camera that makes things look beautiful. It's right. Everything else around it. The props department, production design, lighting, audio, all of these other things are making it look the way that it does. It's not necessarily the phone. In fact, I saw something. I'll see if I can remember what it is, and I'll put it in the show notes. But it was a video that was shot on iPhone 16 and anamorphic. They explained really well how they put it all together. And very honestly, we're like, okay, this looks amazing, not because it's the phone, but it looks amazing because of the crew and the personnel around it, which is really the most important thing. Unless you're shooting nature docs, you got to have, like, what you see in front of the camera has to be flawless. And that has nothing to do with the camera.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look at the behind the scenes footage of the Apple iPhone events and how they actually shot it on iPhone. You'll see tons of grip and electric equipment. You'll see, tons of crew and whatnot. So it's not just, Tim Cook holding an iPhone out, or on a tripod or something like that. Like there's a lot still involved in that. So that's what I mean. Like, I don't think that the invention of these tools at an accessible price are going to just wipe away everything else.
There's a couple of complaints I have about this phone. And I don't even know if it's a complaint, honestly, but that the camera control button, I like it, but I feel like I press it all the time accidentally as I'm grabbing the phone. And I'm like, oh my God, and maybe I just have to change the way that I grab the phone, but I am constantly pressing that button. Do you find that as well?
I've done that a couple of times. There's actually a setting. I don't have my phone in front of me, but there's a setting that allows you to change how easy it is to, activate the camera.
What do you mean, like the sensitivity or something?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact wording because I don't have it in front of me, but there is a way to actually adjust that.
Now I want to see. Adjust sensitivity.
I was just looking around for my my phone, and I'm like, where is it? And then I just remembered I'm using it as this webcam.
Oh, there you go. A case in point. All right, so adjust sensitivity of camera control button. Let's see. Yeah, it's there. There is a way to do it. Yeah,
and you can also change some of the settings where, if you just want to use it to take the photo versus by default, you can also like lightly double press it to change the setting that it's adjusting and things like that.
Hold on. I'm going to pull it up so you guys can see it, those of you that are watching on YouTube. But yes, it looks like you can adjust the camera control pressure. Let me see, what's this? Ooh, this is really helpful. Settings go to, it's an accessibility. Okay, that makes sense. And you've noticed that changed? Like you didn't end up
I haven't personally tried it. I just know that it's an option. And there's actual, like these settings are in accessibility, but there's an actual, under like the camera settings, there are those additional features that I mentioned where you can say, yes, I want to be able to adjust settings with it with a double tap versus no, I only want to use it to take photos.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to be better because I do. Oh my God. Over this weekend, I seriously felt like I was 100 years old so many times because I was having so many problems transferring from my old phone to the new phone every 2 seconds, every time I log into something. Oh, you need a passkey. I was freaking out. I'm screaming at my phone, what is a passkey? I don't have one. I don't want one. I was being driven to absolute insanity. I was ready to throw the phone out the window. Things have settled in my household since then.
Thankfully, I was the amount of texts that I got from Ben asking for tech support was a bit much.
But you handled it with grace. And I know you were doing tech support for your family too, so.
I was, yes. Yeah, new iPhone season for me as a former Apple employee can be a bit overwhelming because I have many people that I support. So I'm glad that you're kind of, it's kind of settled for you now.
Things have settled down, but I'm sure this won't be the last of my tech support needs. Well, what do you guys think? I'd actually like to hear if any of you have done professional paid work for clients with your phone. Obviously, everybody can play around, make cool projects that look amazing. I'm not necessarily concerned about just how amazing you can make it look. I'm concerned in questioning: have you had paid clients that you've used your iPhone for, or whatever your phone may be? It'd be interesting to see how many people out there have actually used their phone as their primary camera for a shoot. Curious what you guys think and what you've done. Feel free to send us links too. I'd love to see this stuff, and maybe we'll have one of you on to talk about the experience, because I think that'd be kind of interesting to talk about.
Sweet, I agree.
All right. Well, I think it's time to wrap it up. It's been about a half an hour, and we're trying to keep these episodes that we're not doing the interviews, just kind of brief, just to talk about different things that are going on in our lives and in the production world. Like I said, we are making some changes to Go Creative Show. We are still doing interviews, so don't worry, but we want to give you more consistent content, and that means bringing Connor on more and talking about different things going on with the production industry. So
hopefully you liked this interview.
We hope so. If all of our subscribers go down and everyone says they hate it, then maybe we'll rethink.
Yeah. Bye, Connor.
Yes. All of a sudden, you'll see a new guest next week.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening and for supporting Go Creative Show all these years. And we hope that you like where the show goes in the future. Till then, you can check us out online at gocreativeshow.com. And you can certainly check out bcmediaproductions.com, which is our production company. Connor, you want to plug anything?
No, I would say stay tuned regarding BC Media because I think maybe even on the next episode, we'll be talking about some branding changes, which are always very exciting.
That's true. We did do a complete new brand. In fact, I'm looking, my windows have been done, but nothing else. So no one knows what the logo looks like except for the people walking down this street in Haverhill. But yeah, new branding, new messaging, new everything. So there'll be a lot to talk about with that too. But thank you all. Have a great one. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week on the next episode of Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers.